Strong words there. Margaret Brennan now joins me from the White House. And Margaret, I want to get to that warning of a sort, perhaps a shot across the bow from Sean Spicer just a moment. But let's begin again with the firing of Sally Yates. And the word used in that letter that was hand-delivered, betrayed, accused by the president of betraying the DOJ. How significant is this?
Sharp words from the president when he fired Sally Yates, but perhaps not surprising, very fitting for the kind of language Donald Trump as candidate and now President Trump continues to use when he sees what he sees as a betrayal or disloyalty. He called her weak. But when you look at the grounds for Yates' dissent here, her refusal to enforce the ban, which had already been reviewed by Justice Department lawyers, she comes down to two concerns, one of them as to the legality, the other as to the execution, which even many Republican members of Congress have criticized here as sloppy, given that a number of cabinet members of the Trump administration were not fully briefed or informed as to how they were charged with executing this order. And so that's one of the grounds where how do you defend this if you are, handling this as a crisis rather than as a strategic choice. She also objected to some of President Trump's own language, not only as candidate Trump saying specifically he wanted a Muslim ban, something as president he claims this is not. The White House strongly defends their list of 7 countries as not religiously based, but based on security. But when you listen to that interview that President Trump gave to Christian Broadcasting Network the other day, he specifically said he was doing this to prioritize Christians. So that language that he has described this with publicly versus the language in that executive order itself is something combined Sally Yates, from what I understand, was not comfortable with. And certainly in standing opposed to it, she did that which she promised, in fact, Jeff Sessions himself, that she would do back in 2015. I also want to ask about some news that you delivered as well. Diplomats from Indonesia, Qatar, UAE, and the Sudan have all sent cables essentially saying that which much of the opposition has said over these last 72 hours, that this is tantamount to a recruitment tool for ISIS. Yes, those are Muslim-majority countries who have all warned American diplomats stationed there, who have since sent cables back to the State Department saying, listen, we are being told that this travel ban essentially puts a target on the backs of any Muslim ally of the United States. That was how a Qatari diplomat described it. What that, from their perspective, is even if these countries aren't on the banned list, they see this as feeding into ISIS's propaganda, the argument that it's the West at war with Islam rather than those affected by terrorism working together in a coalition to defeat terrorists, which is how some of America's most important allies in this fight, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qataris, and others, would frame things. And certainly King Abdullah of Jordan, who was the first Arab Muslim leader to meet with the Trump administration yesterday, raised this issue as well. His country is not banned, but he said, look, you are causing problems for me here with my own people because I thought this was a war we were in together. Because look at this, factually speaking, I'm told he said to Vice President Pence, the majority of victims of terrorism are Muslim. Let's stand together, not separate us. And this kind of rhetoric is divisive and dangerous. So that's the kind of language that you're hearing from people overseas who say, look, your domestic politics, you may not realize, are being amplified this way, this dangerous way around the world. Of course, for those who support President Trump, who voted for him, this was one of the prime reasons many were motivated to support him, because they see this as strong on national security. But of course, even many of those Republicans who supported President Trump on Capitol Hill say they are not comfortable, that they weren't fully briefed on this and weren't able to raise their concerns as to how to implement it properly.
Certainly things we've heard from various departments, including the State Department. And, again, Margaret, we heard Sean Spicer yesterday with that shot across the bow at State Department officials who would dissent. It certainly seemed to reinforce something of a precedent of a sort. It certainly also seemed to suggest that perhaps to a Trump administration, dissent is betrayal and vice versa. What are you hearing from inside the State Department about what Spicer had to say?
Well, from some of those who have signed on to that letter, I've been told there are so many co-signatories that they were looking at cutting off the number of people who could sign on. We're talking about hundreds of people here. And I think it is worth pointing out to the public that 70% of the people who work at the State Department are career officials. They are not political appointees. They work for whomever is running the White House. And they are among some of the most well-traveled, well-briefed individuals as to how American security is impacted around the world. So the grounds for their objections were on that basis, and also saying, look, when it comes to defending American values, this undermines our case and will damage America's interest in the long term. That was the grounds for the letter. This wasn't politically motivated from the officials who talked to us about it. And so that letter and this dissent channel is something that's institutionalized within the State Department, specifically so the rank and file can raise red flags to upper management. It was created back in the Vietnam War era so that people who know what's happening on the ground can say to upper management, hey, we see something here that could be dangerous down the line. So for Sean Spicer here at the White House to say basically you're with us or against us to Americans who have dedicated most of their career to serving the country really was something that people inside Foggy Bottom State Department see as dangerous and ultimately not in the best interest of American foreign policy, because they say they're raising these objections to get us to the right policy, not to attack President Trump. So we'll see if Rex Tillerson, if confirmed this week as expected, when he sits as Secretary of State, if he does indeed meet with some of these dissenters to hear them out and to see if there's a merit to their case that they've made publicly now.
So we know reports that suggest that Tillerson himself was actually not pleased that he, in fact, had not been briefed and did not know of this order really until it was signed, echoing the thoughts of many. Margaret Brennan there at the White House. As always, we do appreciate it.